the Tuttle twins and the Miraculous pencil. Ethan and Emily Tuttle had been looking forward to their class field trip for weeks. They loved experiencing new things, especially when they got to leave school for the morning. Miss Miner, the twins' teacher, had been helping her students understand what an economy is. She taught them that an economy is just a fancy word for lots of people working together to buy and sell things. To learn more about it, Miss Miner decided to take the class on a field trip to a place where people make things to sell to others. She even let the students choose where they should go. They came up with several suggestions: a restaurant, a farm, a computer company, and a bakery. Fresh cinnamon rolls sounded great. After a long discussion, the class settled on a different idea. They decided they would visit where the workers make things that students use, such as pens, pencils, notebooks, and rulers. Miss Miner hinted that they might even get a souvenir. When the bus arrived at the factory, the kids were a little disappointed. It was nothing like they imagined. One of the kids groaned, "This looks boring. There's no way anything fun happens here." Another complained, "I wish we went to the cinnamon roll bakery instead." "Don't worry, kids," Miss Miner said. "The magic happens inside." They all shuffled inside and walked past a large room full of machines. One of the workers waved to them. The kids all stopped and pushed their noses up against the glass to get a better look. "Look at all that paper," shouted Ethan, pointing through the window at large rolls of paper that looked as big as their school bus. "Come on, everybody," said Miss Miner. "I bet we'll get a better look at those machines a little later." The students were led to a room where a friendly man greeted them, handing each of them a pencil. "Welcome, everybody," the man said. "My name is Carl, and I work here. Can all of you do me a favor and hold up the pencil I gave you?" They each held up their pencil. Emily stretched hers high into the air, twirling it between her fingers with the hope of being noticed. "Here's my question for you as we begin today," said Carl. "Do you think the pencil you're holding is easy or hard to make?" A couple of kids quickly said, "Easy," and then everyone else said the same thing, copying the students who had answered first. "Well, I'm going to make a bold claim," Carl said as he smiled. "That pencil in your hands is actually extremely difficult to make, and surprisingly enough, not a single person on the face of the earth knows how to make one." Ethan and Emily looked at each other with looks of disbelief on their faces. "That's impossible," shouted a girl named Jessica. "Then how can there be any pencils if nobody knows how to make them?" "That's a great question," replied Carl. "Let me come back to that after we talk a little more." He then turned around and drew a bunch of lines on the whiteboard. "This is kind of like a family tree, which lets us see all of the people who help make us who we are. Our parents, our grandparents, and so on. Look at that pencil in your hands," he said. "What are the parts that make up a pencil? And where did they all come from? What is the pencil's family tree?" "Wood," shouted Ethan excitedly. His classmates joined in to provide a list of other pieces: lead, an eraser, some metal to hold the eraser to the pencil, and some paint. Carl wrote them down. "Great, now I need a volunteer. How about you?" he asked, pointing to Emily. "I want you to try and continue this chart. Start with the wood. Where does the wood come from?" Emily stood up and wrote "tree" in one of the circles of the family tree. "And how does the tree get from the forest to the factory?" Carl asked. "Well, some people would have to cut it down," Emily said. "And then they would have to put it on a truck." She then wrote "saw" and "truck" on the family tree. "Let's keep it going," said Carl. As Emily sat down, what materials would a person need to be able to make a truck? Ethan's hand shot up. "You need fuel, so it could run, and lots of metal and rubber for the tires. You'd also need rope to tie the logs to the truck, he said as Carl wrote them on the board. Does anybody here know how to make rope? Carl asked. Nobody raised their hand. Think of all the hemp plants that need to be grown to make it, and the equipment used to water those plants, and the machines built to harvest them. All these workers need to eat, right? Carl continued. We can't work without eating. So we have to also think of the farms, the grocery store employees, and the cooks. We need all those things to make a pencil, one of the students asked. Nope, we need all these things and many more just to get the wood for the pencil, Carl said with a chuckle. The students were amazed. Now they were beginning to understand that making a simple pencil was not so simple at all. Now let's learn about the other parts of the pencil's family tree, Carl said. Carl started a video chat with a smiling woman who waved to the children. This is Mary, everybody. She's in charge of buying the best materials from all over the world for us to use. Wow, where are you, Mary? Emily asked. Well, I usually work in London, she responded, but today I'm in South Korea to inspect some graphite we want to buy to make pencil lead. What's so special about South Korea? Carl asked her. Why don't we buy it somewhere else? That's an important question, Mary said. We want to sell our pencils at a low price, so we have to find the best materials at the least expensive prices, wherever that might be. This means that people all around the world compete for our business, she said. Mary explained how the graphite they purchase is mined in a large open pit and then heated and compressed in a processing plant. The graphite is then packaged and shipped to another factory to be mixed with clay, wax, and chemicals. I visit many places around the world, buying different materials to make our pencils. The yellow paint called lacquer is made from castor oil, which comes from plants grown in India, Mary said. To make our eraser, we buy rapeseed oil from Indonesia and oil from rubber trees grown in Africa. We also use pumice from Italy to make them gritty, so they work better, she added. The ferrule is the small piece of metal that helps secure the eraser to the pencil, Mary explained. We cut them from sheets of brass we buy from people who mine zinc and copper ore. They melt the metals, mix them together, and press them into sheets for us to use. Each step in the process requires big machines and people from all around the world working together, said Carl. The different parts are finally shipped to us, and we put them all together to make a pencil. The kids waved goodbye to Mary as Carl led them to where they could see the factory floor. Ethan cranked his neck to better see everything below. He could see the wood pieces being cut, glued, and attached around the long, skinny pieces of graphite. A large machine was also spraying the yellow lacquer onto each of the pencils, and another was attaching the eraser with tiny furrows. Emily closely inspected each part of the pencil she was holding. It was so interesting to think about all the people who had worked together to make it, and how the different parts came from all over the world. After returning to their room, Carl directed everyone's attention to the whiteboard. If we were to write a pencil's entire family tree, it would be very, very large, he said. Ethan was trying to remember all the things involved in making a pencil, but there were so many that he lost count and forgot some of them. Remember that you asked earlier, young lady? Carl asked Jessica. You wanted to know how there can be pencils if nobody knows how to make them. Do you know now? I think it's because nobody knows how to make all different parts of a pencil all by themselves, she replied. That's right, Carl said. If you tried to make a pencil without anyone else helping you, it would be impossible. How could you travel all over the world to get the materials you needed without ships or planes, he asked the kids. How would you gather each of the materials without tools and machines, or put them together without factories, Carl said. And if you were busy doing all of that, When would you have time to find food to eat or build a home to live in? Carl stretched his arm out to say, that's why it takes millions of people working together. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who live in different countries, and who will never even meet one another. Do all those people even know they're making a pencil? Wondered Ethan aloud. No, they don't, replied Carl. Let's think of it a different way. What type of work would you like to do when you grow up? The kids shouted out their answers, including a house builder, a teacher, a musician, a farmer, an astronaut, and a scientist. Ethan wanted to be a basketball player, and Emily said she wanted to be a doctor. The logger who cut down the trees for the pencils doesn't know if the wood would be turned into furniture, a house, a pencil, or something else, Carl responded. He may not even like using pencils. The same is true for the doctor, who might treat the logger and his family. The farmer who needs the doctor, or even the musician who entertains the farmer, he added. Almost every job you can think of may actually be helping to make a part of the pencil without the person even realizing it. And that's how it works for everything that's made, right? Emily asked. Not just pencils? Definitely, Carl said. Your clothes, your backpacks, your shoes, everything you own and use requires many people working together. Remember, added Miss Miner, the economy is made up of people buying and selling things. If people tried to make everything on their own, they wouldn't be able to, and life would be hard. But because we divide up the work into different jobs, each person works on something that others can use, she said. We work together automatically, without even really knowing it. There's no boss telling everybody what to do. This is something we call spontaneous order, and it's the reason why we can have so many wonderful things today, said Miss Miner. It's time for you to head home now, said Carl. But before you go, take another look at your new pencil. Millions of people, including me, help make your pencil, but we don't know how you will use it. Will your pencil draw plans for a new invention? Will it make a work of art? Will it help you do your homework or write a letter? The pencil's family tree continues with each of you, and it will continue on and on for as long as you keep making new things with it. Carl waved goodbye to each of the students. I hope you do something great with your pencils, he shouted as they loaded back onto the bus. So what did you learn about today? Asked Donald, the bus driver. Miss Miner, with a smile on her face, quickly answered. They all learned how to make pencils. Right, everybody? The kids laughed, and Ethan shouted, I don't know how to make a pencil, Miss Miner. No one does. But the rest of the trip home, Ethan and Emily took turns looking through their backpacks, wondering about how all the miraculous objects were made. It was like a new world had been opened up to them, imagining the entire family tree of everything they saw. The end.